is part 4 of My Faith, My Fire. I'm going to conclude this series tonight. And in worship, I felt specifically, we believe that God speaks. And I felt so clearly that God said that someone's whole life is going to change tonight. So somebody's life is going to change tonight. And I don't know who that's for, but just get ready. It could be you, okay? Just get on the edge of your seat because it could be you. I believe it with my whole entire heart that if you open your heart and you say, God, you can do whatever you want to do in me tonight, I promise you your life is going to change. So this, with this series, our sermon series text has been Luke chapter 12, verse 35. You should have it memorized by now. It says, be dressed and ready for service and keep your lamps burning. Keep your lamps burning. This whole series has been all about having ownership of your faith. Having ownership of your faith. That's why it's called My Faith and My Fire. It's ownership. It's saying, this is mine. You know, there is a huge difference between something that's just given to you and something that you buy for yourself, right? Anybody like me, you grow up, you know, getting hand-me-downs? Anybody wave of hands, you get hand-me-downs? Oh, yes. How many of you had more hand-me-downs than new clothes? Yep, yes. Hand-me-downs, if you don't know, but you should. Hand-me-downs are when they're clothes, basically, that someone else paid for, someone else bought, someone else used, wore, used, and then when they're done with it, they gave it to you, right? So it's already all wrinkled, it already has a certain smell to it, it has stains on it, and it's already used. Like, similar to hand-me-downs, any thrifters in here? Lots of thrifters. Okay, no shade, but I'm not a thrifter. Thank you. My husband is a thrifter. And when we got married, I think every one of his clothes were all thrifted. And not throwing him under the bus, but I think every white t-shirt that he had pit stains on them, and they weren't his. Nasty. And he's like, well, you paid $20 for your shirt. I paid like 2 cents for mine. And I'm like, I don't care. You can't. No, absolutely not. I don't know about you, but I'm just the kind of person who's like, I'd rather pay to have something brand new. I know that's not popular and trendy right now, but I am all about brand new. Like owning something that's just mine. No one else has worn this. No one else has used this. It's not a hand-me-down. It's not thrifted. This is my shirt. This is mine. And we treat things way, way differently when we have bought it for ourselves versus if it was just given to us, don't we? Hand-me-downs, listen, I don't care what stains are on it. I don't care if it's wrinkly. I don't care, you just throw it on the floor. You don't really care about it. So anyone can use it, but if it's mine and it's name brand and I paid full price for it, no, I'm protecting that thing. That's mine. And I remember growing up, this was probably, and you can probably relate to this, but me and my sister used to fight over clothes more than anything. I mean, it was like make or break for our relationship. I even had to put a lock on my closet door to keep her from taking my clothes. Why? Because they were mine. You know what the difference is between how we treat clothes that are ours versus hand-me-downs or thrift clothes? Is ownership. It's ownership. And that's what this whole series is about, is having ownership of your own faith. And this is so common. So I've been leading in youth ministry for I think 5 or 6 years now. And this is probably the most common problem that happens is our faith is not ours. Our faith isn't ours. We grew up in the Bible Belt, right? So we grew up in church. Our parents are Christians. We hear scriptures all the time. And we feel like we are grafted in. And we don't have ownership of our own faith. And you know what happens is we tend to treat our faith like hand-me-downs. Why? Because we didn't pay for it. We didn't, no, this was given to me. My question for you tonight is your faith yours? Is your faith yours? Well, my parents, they're Christians, or I grew up in church, or I can tell you all the scriptures, or I go to church all the time, but that doesn't mean your faith is yours. Do you remember a time, a date, how old you were, a season of life that you were when you said yes to Jesus for the first time? Where you said, no, this is my faith. I'm saying yes to Jesus for me. And if you can't remember a time when you actually made this faith your own, I would question if it is your own. And what happens when our faith is not our own is we won't protect it. We won't protect. It's like me and my sister having my closet is completely open. It's like having an open door policy. So whoever and whatever can come in and take whatever they want and do whatever they want to it. They can wear it, they can stretch it out, they can wrinkle it, they can stain it, they can tear it. Anyone can come in because it's an open door policy, because I'm not gonna protect it, because it's not, I don't really have ownership of it. But if you have ownership of your faith, listen, you'll protect it. You'll protect it. And some of you may have been like, man, these negative thoughts and these dark thoughts or things are coming in and trying to steal your faith. In fact, John chapter 10, verse 10 says that the enemy is a thief, and he comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. The enemy's goal is to come into your closet and rob from you and to steal from you. And if you don't have ownership of your faith, you won't protect it. You won't protect it. You need to have a protective mentality over your faith that says, no, doubt comes in, like, God, are you even real? No, that's the enemy. That is the enemy. There's a lock on my closet. I'm not just gonna be like, yeah, God, like, yeah, you must not be real. Like, those doubts just come in and take whatever you want. No. There needs to be a protective mentality that says, absolutely not. This is my faith and this is my fire. Those depression, depression comes in, anxiety comes in, people question and challenge your faith. You should have that protective mentality that says, no, this is my faith and my fire. And that is what this entire series has been about, is having ownership of your faith. And I feel like there's some people in here who need to make a decision tonight to have ownership of your faith. Maybe for the first time of your entire life, saying, this faith is mine. I'm not just living off my parents' faith or my pastor's faith or my leader's faith. You know what a really good marker or a clue to if your faith is yours is let me say it this way. If you come to church because you know the value of it, or you come to church because your parents or your pastors forced you to come. Big marker. If no one texted you, if no one called you, if no one was inviting you on Instagram, would you come to the house of God because you know the importance of it and you have ownership of your faith? Do you read the Bible on your own because you know it's fuel to your spirit? Or do you only read the Bible here on Wednesday nights? Those are clues on if your faith is your own. And I feel like tonight there's some people who are saying, I need to make a fresh commitment to say, this is my faith and my fire, and I'm not letting anything or anyone come and steal and rob and destroy from my life. But that ownership of your faith is level 1. Okay, that's ground level 0. That's where we start as Christians, is saying this is my faith and my fire. And level 2 is what we're gonna really talk about tonight, is having ownership of our land. Ownership of our land. Once you have ownership of your faith, you need to have ownership of your land. And this is found in Deuteronomy chapter 1, if you have it in your Bibles, starting in verse 6. And we're going to go through verse 8. It says, the Lord our God said to us at Horeb, you have stayed long enough at this mountain. It says, break camp in advance. Turn to someone next to you and say, break camp. Say it like you mean it. Say, break camp in advance. Into the hill country of the Amorites. Go to the neighboring peoples in the Arabah, in the mountains, in the western foothills, in the Negev, and along the coast, to the land of the Canaanites and to Lebanon. Go to everywhere and everyone, as far as the great river, the Euphrates. Verse 8, highlight this in your Bible, write it down. It says, see, I have given you this land. Go in and take possession of the land the Lord swore he would give to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to their descendants after them. To give you a little context of what's happening in this passage in Deuteronomy, Moses, does anyone know Moses? Moses leads the Israelites out of captivity, right? They're out of slavery. And God promises the Israelites that he's going to bring them into the promised land. But what happens is the Israelites and Moses are wandering around for 40 years. And in this passage, in chapter 1, verse 6, where they are is they find themselves at the Jordan River, and they're camped out. So they had been wandering for 40 years, and then they camp out at the Jordan River. And this is where they are. And this, I'm sure they don't have as cool of tents as we have today. But they're camped out. They're chilling. They're relaxing. They're protected, and they're comfortable, and they're safe and secure, and they're good at the Jordan River. They're good. And this is where God speaks to them. But I want you to see, this is where we find them, is they're just chilling. They're camped out. And this is where so many of us find ourselves in our Christian journey. And this is where so many of us are today, is we have our own faith. We have our own fire. We have ownership of our walk with God, but we are living in comfort. And we have camped out at the Jordan River. This is literally what we look like. We have our relationship with God. We believe in God. We have a strong relationship with him. We go to church. We read our Bible. This is my faith and my fire, but I am just comfortable and secure and chilling. And I'm taking a nap, and this is actually really comfortable in here, honestly. I can like straight chill. And we're just in our comfort zone. And we have our own faith and our own walk with God, and we're doing great. But we're living a selfish Christian life for our own comfort and our own safety and our own security, and we're not going anywhere. And we're not advancing, and we're not making a difference, and we're not making an impact. We're just living safe. And we're trying to get through life to graduate high school with a good GPA and go to a good college and marry a good person and have kids and have a good job, make some money, and just try to be as comfortable as possible. Just try to be as comfortable as possible. And I feel like maybe when God looks down on his sons and daughters, he probably sees tons of us taking a nap in tents when he's called us into a promised land. When God's called us into greater and more and to make an impact, we're just chilling in our tents. We're chilling in our comfort zone. We're living life for ourselves. But where God's called you is not comfortable. It's not comfortable. And we're going to talk about, what God says to them when they are just chilling, because they're like, we don't need to go. We're good here. I know God promised us that great land, but we don't need to, and it'd probably be way easier to stay. But God uses Moses to speak to them and give them very specific direction. And this is what he says. It's so interesting. He says, you have stayed here long enough. You've stayed here long enough. You have stayed in comfort long enough. You've stayed in your tent long enough. You've been living for yourself long enough. You've been living safe long enough. You've been here long enough. And I want to tell you tonight that God is speaking the same thing to you. You've been living a safe Christian journey for long enough. It is time to move. It is time to, and we're going to talk about what he tells them to do. But we got to move on. We can't live safely and live safe, comfortable Christian lives. God's called us to so much more. And this is the first thing that God tells them to do. He says, break camp. Number one, you got to break camp. To break camp, let me read this to you first. In verse 6, it says, the Lord our God said to us at Horeb, you have stayed long enough at this mountain. Break camp. They're going to tear this down, and I want you to visually see this, because this is what God tells them to do. As they're living in comfort, the first thing he tells them is you got to break camp. You have to tear down and get rid of what has kept you comfortable, safe, and secure and protected. You got to get rid of it. You have to get rid of it. Break camp means to tear down or remove what has previously protected you and kept you comfortable. I have a question for you. What in your life has kept you comfortable? What is your tent? What's been holding you back? Maybe you know what God has called you to do, your promised land, where he's calling you to go, the purpose, the destiny that he has for you, and you've just been stuck. For you, maybe it's your friend group. Maybe your tent is your friend group, and every time you try to step out, they're like, no. We don't go over there. Stay over here. Maybe you're at lunch and you see someone sitting by themselves and you're like, guys, I really think we should go sit with them and like make them feel comfortable. Maybe we should go sit. And they're like, no, just stay here. Stay like this is our tent. You stay here. Anytime you try to step out and do something, they're like, no, stay in the tent. Maybe your tent is your friend group. Maybe your tent is your normal routine. Your just normal routine. This is just what I do. This is my day-to-day. Every day, just doing the same thing. The monotonous routine of life is your comfortable tent. It's, yes, I go to school, I go to church, and I do this and this and this, and it's just normal. And maybe you got to break out of your normal routine. A lot of times, you just got to shake it up, shake things up, go on a mission trip. Try something new. Pray for someone random on the street. Do something to shake up your normal routine. You got to break out of normal and out of comfortable. Maybe what your tent that's been holding you back is your own fear and doubts in your mind. Thoughts like, what would happen if I fail? What would happen if I look stupid? What if that's not what God's called me to do? And all of those what ifs are your tent that's just been keeping you in a safe place. And God is telling the Israelites in this verse, and God is telling us tonight that we got to break out of that. We got to break camp and tear down and get rid of what has kept us comfortable. I remember when I got saved. And there were so many tents that I had to break out of. There were so many things I had to get rid of and break camp with. I had to block a lot of numbers on my phone. I had to stop going to a lot of certain places. I had to stop listening to certain music, watching certain movies, hanging out at certain parties. I had to break out of comfort. But the next thing that God tells them to do is, first he tells them to break camp. Next thing he tells them to do is advance. Because you can't just break camp and stay where you are. God tells them to break camp and advance. Advance means to move forward in a purposeful way or to make progress. I want you to picture if I was like camping. I went camping. This was my tent. And I tore it down. I broke camp. But I literally was just staying in the same place. I want you to picture this. And maybe people I'm with are like, are you coming? And I'm like, no, I'm good. Just here. No, why do we break camp? So we can move. We break camp so that we can make progress and advance. You don't just break camp and get rid of those things and stay in the same place. Are you staying in the same place or are you moving forward? Do you feel like you've been on a treadmill? You're running, you're doing your thing, but you're not going anywhere. Or are you making advancement? In your life, are you advancing or are you staying in the same place? How to advance in the right direction? Read the word. Read the word. Spend time in prayer. Make going to church a priority. Again, without your parents forcing you to, without your pastors, leaders forcing, you do it because you know it is your priority. Serve the house of God. How do you advance? Serve the house of God. We would love for you to start serving. Go to Church1132.com and go to the youth page, and there's literally a link there where you can start serving. And there's so much power. That's how you advance. Serve the house of God. Make godly community a priority. Pastor Cam talked about groups. Godly community is essential. It's everything. You cannot go where God's called you to go alone. You need people with you. And making godly community a priority is a way to advance. God tells the Israelites to break camp, to advance. And this is where we're going to end. The last thing that we have to do is take possession. Take possession. Verse 7 says, go to all the neighboring peoples in the Arabah, in the mountains, in the western foothills, in the Negev, all these places along the coast to the land of the Canaanites and to Lebanon, as far as the great river, the Euphrates. Go to everyone and everything. Verse 8 says, see, I have given you this land. I have given you this land. You know, there's land that God has given you. There is land that God has given you. The land that God has given you is whatever circle of influence that you have. Whatever circle of influence that you have is the land that God's given you. This is your friend group. This is your family. This is your city. This is your school. Whatever circle of influence that you have, this is your land. But just because God's given it to us doesn't mean we have possession of it. Right? Like God's given it to us. Yes, this is ours, but it doesn't mean that we have possession. Like if you ever have you ever had anything stolen from you or robbed from you? It's still yours, but it's not in your hands. It's not in your possession. Your entire land is yours that God has given you, but it's just in the wrong hands. That's literally our cities are ours. They're just in the wrong hands. And what God's telling us is, yes, it's ours. We just have to go in and take possession of it. We have to go and take possession of it. 3 ways to take possession of the land God has given you. Number 1, pray for your land. Pray for your land. Instead of complaining, pray. Instead of worrying, pray. Instead of fighting with your parents, pray for them. Instead of arguing, complaining, fighting, pray for them. Pray for your parents. Pray for your friends that are lost. Pray for your friends who are struggling, come to you with all their problems. Pray for them. Prayer is powerful. Maybe people have come to you with problems and things and like all of the things that we're struggling with in life. And instead of trying to counsel them and give them the best advice you have, you should just pray for them. And say, listen, I don't have all the answers, but can I pray for you? Pray, the power of prayer. Pray for your land. Secondly, share your faith with people. And the easiest way to do this is to invite them to church. Share your faith with people. This is how listen, I know it's not comfortable, but this is how we got to break out of comfort, advance, and go take possession of the land God's given us. And I know it's like scary, but listen, it doesn't have to be weird. Sharing your faith does not have to be weird at all. It's literally like, oh my gosh, you're struggling with that? I have an answer. And this is what God's done, using your testimony. This is what God's done in my life. You know, I used to struggle with the same things, and God set me free from that. And I believe that He can do the same for you. Sharing your faith. being vocal. Do your friends know about your faith? It's a convicting question. If they look on your social media, can they see your faith? Are you vocal about your faith? Share your faith with people. Invite them to church. Christian Donnelly's here, and his story is just so powerful. He used to be just so an amazing man, had, strong faith in God in high school. And I think it was his senior year. He was just so consumed with sports that was his priority. And then God wrecked him, encountered him, and marked him. And then all of a sudden, Christian started taking possession of the land God has given him. He's literally ruthless. He is like the most powerful evangelist who's taking so much possession. He's evangelizing everywhere. He sees people getting saved all the time. You should follow him on social media. And he is like sharing devotionals, praying for people. Why? Because he said, God did all of this for me, but I'm not living a safe, comfortable Christian life. I'm taking possession and sharing what God did in me. The last thing to take possession of the land God has given you is to live as an example. Your life should preach louder than anything. People will just notice when you live different. When you don't cuss, you don't talk bad about people, you don't go to the same parties, you don't do the same. Just living different will speak for itself. People will start to ask questions. You're joyful, you just have so much joy. Overwhelming joy, that's not normal. People will be like, why are you so happy? Literally, why are you so happy all the time? Just living as an example. I wonder what would happen if every person in this room decided to get out of their tent, get out of their comfort, get out of normal, get out of neutral, get out of the day-to-day to break camp, advance, and take possession of the land that God has given us. I wonder what would happen. I wonder if there would be thousands and thousands of young people who say yes to Jesus and are set on fire. And if there's revival in our cities. Why? Because you chose to take possession. Because this land is ours, but we still have to go share it. We have to take it outside of the four walls and get out of our tent and our comfort and go take it and take possession of the land God has given us. God is not okay with us staying in our comfort, staying at the Jordan River. He's telling us we got to break camp, advance, and go take possession of the land that I have given you. Take possession of the land God has given you. What would happen if you saw your family saved? What would happen if you saw your parents saved? What would happen if you saw people say yes to Jesus for the first time in your classrooms or on your sports teams? What would happen if you decided to actually go and take possession? And I know it's uncomfortable and I know it's scary, but that's what God's calling us to do. And that's how we're going to take our cities back. That's how because last time I checked, the world doesn't have the answer. Last time I checked, the world does not work for people. It doesn't. Depression, anxiety, suicide rates are at an all-time high. Why? Because it's in the wrong hands. And it's not working for people. We have to go take possession of the land God has given us. What would happen if we made Jesus more famous than celebrities, than sports, than concerts and football games and hockey games for me? What would happen if we saw thousands? What would happen if we couldn't fit in this building? Because we all chose to take possession of the land that God has given us. God wants to move in our cities and He wants to use you. He wants to use you, but He's waiting on you to break camp, advance, and take possession of the land. You go ahead and stand up on your feet with me.